Today is Friday, March 4th. We'll tell you what Russia and Ukraine agreed to during peace talks and what to know about a fire at Europe's largest nuclear plant. Also, the U.S. and other nations are taking some new specific steps to help Ukrainian refugees and to punish a group of people they call Putin's cronies. Plus, a rocket part on a collision course with the moon, how Twitter is becoming more like Wikipedia, and what to expect from the start of the Paralympic Games. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. A second round of peace talks between the Ukraine and Russia ended with no deal to end the war. But the two sides did agree on one thing. They will set up humanitarian pathways for civilians to get out of Ukraine. That's crucial, too, since people are still fleeing at an unprecedented rate. More than 1 million Ukrainians have become refugees in the last week, and the United Nations expects that number to be 10 million before this war is over. This war shows no signs of slowing down either. Russian troops just keep stepping up their attacks on major Ukrainian population centers, especially in the southern part of the country. Overnight in southeastern Ukraine, Russian forces started firing on Europe's largest nuclear power plant. A fire broke out, but has since been extinguished. There was some damage, but officials say the most essential equipment is okay and they have not detected any radiation nearby. Meanwhile, Russian troops are still slowly moving toward the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. And they're continuing airstrikes over the city, too. Through all of this, Ukraine's president is promising to fight back against the Russian forces. Ukrainians are getting more help from other nations in Europe and here in North America. For starters, the American Homeland Security Department says Ukrainians already in the United States are going to get temporary protected status. Now, that means they will not be deported for at least the next 18 months. The Migration Policy Institute says that will benefit about 30,000 Ukrainians who are now in the U.S. on temporary visas or who don't have any legal status. Canada is also opening its doors to Ukrainian refugees. The country says it's going to fast-track Ukrainian applications for both temporary and permanent residency status with full access to work and study programs. And Canada says there will be no limit to how many Ukrainians they'll accept. But for now, at least, most Ukrainians are fleeing to nearby European countries. So the European Union decided to let Ukrainian refugees live and work there for up to 3 years. And they won't have to go through the usual lengthy asylum procedures. There's been some criticism, though, since other migrants who fled conflict from the Middle East and Africa in recent years have not gotten the same treatment. Some European leaders say this is different since Ukraine is an ally and the scale of the Ukrainian refugee crisis could be historic. The White House is now targeting even more Russian oligarchs with sanctions. Those rich business leaders with close ties to Russia's president will be cut off from the U.S. financial system. Their assets will be frozen in the U.S., so officials will be able to seize their luxury apartments, super yachts, private jets, and other property in the States. It's a little tricky when the yachts are in international waters, but these sanctions also mean they no longer have access to ports, fuel, captains, repairs, or any other supplies from the U.S. The oligarchs and their families will also face visa restrictions. A lot of these same people are facing similar sanctions in the European Union as well. And just yesterday, French authorities seized 4 cargo vessels and 1 luxury yacht linked to oligarchs. A couple of you were asking on Instagram, what happens to these assets once Western governments take control? Well, a law professor who once worked for the Bush administration told NBC News there are options. Like they could be sold at auctions, with the profits going back to the government, or they could be repurposed. The original owners could also take their cases to court to try to get their property back. But some experts say, at least in these cases, it won't be too tough for the U.S. to prove the assets are tied to criminal activity, so the Russian oligarchs will likely never get their stuff back once it's seized. The only officer charged in the violent raid that killed Breonna Taylor 2 years ago was just cleared of all wrongdoing. And remember, even he wasn't actually charged with killing Taylor. To recap, 3 officers were executing a search warrant in Louisville, Kentucky, because they said they had evidence Taylor's ex-boyfriend was selling drugs. But it was late and they were not in uniform, so Taylor's current boyfriend said he thought they were intruders and shot at them. Officer Brett Hankeson fired several shots back, and some bullets made it into the apartment next door. Even though Taylor died in the shooting, investigators said it was justified since the boyfriend fired first. Still, Detective Hankeson was fired from the police force and charged with wanton endangerment for the shots that landed in the neighbor's apartment. Flash forward to this week, and jurors found him not guilty of that as well. They apparently agreed with Hankeson's lawyers, who argued he, quote, did what he thought he had to do in that instant. Soon after the verdict came down, dozens of protesters gathered in Louisville saying the system unfairly protects police officers. But the case is not over just yet. Federal investigators are still scrutinizing this raid and could bring separate charges. The Justice Department is also investigating the Louisville Police Department as a whole. The billionaire Sackler family that owns Purdue Pharma reached another big settlement in response to the opioid crisis. The Sacklers agreed to pay up to $6 billion to settle lawsuits that accuse them of helping fuel addictions since they got rich off the sales of the highly addictive prescription painkiller OxyContin. This new deal shields the family from future civil lawsuits, and it ends their company's bankruptcy case. It also sends billions of dollars to help communities address the opioid crisis. So it has the support of key state attorneys general. The judge presiding over Purdue Pharma's bankruptcy case still has to approve the settlement for it to take effect. We have much more news still ahead, but first, let's take a quick break to thank our sponsor. We all know that feeling of finding something you love, right? Kind of a new obsession. I know I've had that favorite show on Netflix or that go-to restaurant. Well, Rothy's could be your new everyday shoe obsession. They already are for me. In fact, I recently saw someone else wearing Rothy's shoes, and we connected over our love of the company. And I've heard from many of you who also have grown to love Rothy's shoes. But if you haven't tried them yet, or you're ready for a new pair, please know they always provide right out of the box comfort and come in so many different amazing styles and colors, from flats to ankle boots and more. Plus, you can wash them. My latest pair of Rothy's is one of their best sellers. It's called The Point. Plus, I love that everything Rothy's makes is better for the planet. They've repurposed millions of water bottles into their signature thread that goes into every single one of their products. So step up your shoes and accessories this spring and get ready to be asked, are those Rothy's? Plus, get $20 off your first purchase at rothys.com/newsworthy. That's ROTHYS, rothys.com/newsworthy. An out-of-control piece of rocket is set to crash into the moon today. The debris has been floating around in space for the past decade, and experts now think it came from a Chinese rocket test, though China denies it's theirs. Either way, the impact is expected to leave a massive crater, sending moon dust flying for hundreds of miles in all directions. But it won't be visible from Earth or cause any impact here. While this crash is not considered a threat, scientists do say the bigger challenge is what's called space junk in low Earth orbit. Already, there's at least 26,000 pieces of space debris orbiting Earth, and that's just the stuff that's at least the size of a softball, so it can be tracked. We're talking more about the potential impact of space junk and what could be done about it on tomorrow's special edition Saturday episode. The Winter Paralympics kick off in Beijing today with its opening ceremony, and then nearly 50 countries will compete for 78 gold medals. The Games feature athletes with a range of disabilities competing across 6 different sports: alpine skiing, cross-country skiing, biathlon, snowboarding, para-ice hockey, and wheelchair curling. About 600 Paralympic athletes are set to take part, but because of the invasion in Ukraine, athletes from Russia and Belarus are banned. The IPC president apologized to the banned athletes, saying, "You are victims of your government's actions." The Paralympic Games run through next Sunday, and you can catch the coverage on NBC and Peacock. Netflix is the latest big studio to pause all Russian projects in the pipeline, including a few original series already in the works. For example, the production for a Russian-language detective series was halted. There's also Anna K, based on the classic novel Anna Karenina. Production already wrapped up, but it does not have a release date yet. It's not clear what's next for those shows, but Variety says Netflix is assessing the impact of the war before making any more decisions. This is just the latest pushback Russia has gotten from Hollywood. Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, Sony, and Universal all delayed upcoming film releases there. It goes beyond that, too. The Cannes Film Festival, Venice Film Festival, and Toronto Film Festival all said they will not be allowing Russian delegations. And the European Film Academy blocked any Russian films from its awards show. Twitter is expanding its crowdsourced fact-checking program called Birdwatch in hopes of fighting misinformation. The social network launched Birdwatch last year as an experiment. It asks select Twitter users to point out misleading tweets and to write notes to debunk the information, which would then be added to the original tweet. Now, a test group of ordinary users in the United States can see those notes directly on tweets and can rate them as helpful or not. The social media company said it wants both experts and non-experts to write Birdwatch notes, sort of like Wikipedia, which Twitter pointed out thrives with contributions from non-experts as well. But there are skeptics, like the journalism school and research organization, the Poynter Institute. It said more than half of the notes do not include a single source to back up their corrections. Twitter has long been under pressure to do more to keep false information from spreading to its 217 million daily users. If you've been feeling a little burnt out from always being plugged in, here's your chance to take a break. Well, after listening to the newsworthy, of course. Today is National Day of Unplugging, which is a national call to go device-free and take a 24-hour break from technology. It happens every year, the first weekend of March, so it starts tonight and runs through the day tomorrow. The campaign has been going strong for more than a decade now, and in that time, schools, religious institutions, and businesses have all taken part to try and inspire a healthy life-tech balance. Well, that's it for the main news today, but now it's time for Feel Good Friday, when we bring you one extra feel-good or positive news story before the weekend. But first, a message from our sponsor. As a parent, it can be hard to find creative ways to keep your children busy and challenged. Well, KiwiCo helps make it so much easier. And especially with spring arriving, there's a new energy in the air that encourages kids to connect with the world around them, and KiwiCo's monthly science and art projects celebrate that. It's the kind of thing that can lead to a lifelong love of learning. It's always so fun to get our KiwiCo crate. Of course, Dax loves it, and I love seeing him get so excited and engaged with something new. For older kids, they'll get projects that will help them discover things like the science of magic and the engineering of a domino machine and the chemistry of cooking and so much more. So step into spring and celebrate the season of discovery with a KiwiCo subscription. There's no commitment, so you can pause or cancel anytime. And right now, the newsworthy listeners can get 30% off your first month plus free shipping on any crate line with the code newsworthy at kiwico.com. That's 30% off your first month at KIWICO, kiwico.com with the promo code newsworthy. Now back to Feel Good Friday. A North Carolina nonprofit is doing its part to help siblings in foster care stay together. The organization, called Fostering Hopes, is building free homes for foster families to try and keep big sibling groups together and in their own communities. The founder of Fostering Hopes told Fox News North Carolina puts a limit on how many kids can be in one home, including children who are related. So in a lot of cases, he says, siblings are split up, sometimes across the state, and they rarely get to see each other. So to help, the organization teamed up with another nonprofit called H3 Collective to build these so-called professional foster homes. The first one is almost done, and it's big enough for 5 children. But now the organization has to find a couple who can be full-time foster parents. Thankfully, that's what Fostering Hopes does. It recruits potential foster parents for the state. So this time, once the right couple comes along, the whole family will live in the home rent-free. As for what's next, the organization said the goal is to eventually build these homes for foster families all across North Carolina. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with our special edition Saturday episode about space junk. Then join us again Monday for your next news roundup. For now, thank you so much for listening and have a great weekend.